Our central role, gesturally speaking, is engaging in what I would call social therapy. The little discussed reality is that human beings are subject to social conditioning in a powerful way. And if we had the type of society we just described tomorrow, most people would be left confused and disillusioned. It would be like taking a native from the Amazon jungle and dropping them into New York City without any education whatsoever. Their behavior would be based on values which have no relevance in this new environment. In fact, and I know this might sound like a bold statement, but ethics, morality, and values are only as relevant as the social environment's propensity to support them or not. The Zeitgeist movement has various projects in the works. We are working to educate people and hopefully bring them into a new perspective. We have teams and chapters, radio shows, films, PDFs, and annual events to promote this direction. We also do not take any general donations and provide all of our educational materials for free to the public. We are decentralized and work holographically through regional chapter teams and project teams. We have no offices, we have no leaders. I'm not a leader, I'm here as a communicator, and I try to work equally with everyone else. In fact, I would say that we are the initiators of what we call the transition. I believe Mohandas Gandhi had it correct. We must become the change we want to see in the world. Now, the transition itself from our current system into a resource-based economy is a very complex thing to consider. Of course, I get asked this all the time, which is why I'm bringing this up. And unfortunately, the variables are beyond our current foresight. The central issue, however, is awareness. If the public's consciousness can be expanded to understand and accept the incredible potential the future can hold, where poverty, war, 95% of all crime, along with the mundane, repetitive, meaningless jobs, can be eliminated, then I feel that they will be much more likely to adjust their values accordingly. And while there are many variations of outcomes and progressions that might occur as we move from our current system to the next, I will now attempt to summarize a probable path as I see it. The nature of industry to maximize profit by reducing input and labor costs shows a high propensity for the mechanization of labor. Since the Great Depression, this has been the case. The only reason technological unemployment hasn't consistently risen universally in the long term is because technology has also facilitated the introduction of new employment sectors with an adjustment period in between for laborers. In fact, the Great Depression, which was triggered by a lot of things, was also an adjustment period to mechanization. There were new skills that were learned by people that were unemployed as they adapted to the rapid increase to mechanization during that period of time. However, the rate of increase for technological development seems to pair up with Moore's law, if you are familiar. And that has to do with the exponential expansion of the capacity and size of technology. We're going to apply this in a broader sense. In other words, new employment sector skill adjustments, being the amount of time required to adapt to new emerging employment sectors, would need to be on pace with applied technological advancement itself. For example, today, 95% of America works in the service industry. Excuse me, it works in the service industry, often now in front of computers. People had to learn to do this, right? Being computer literate is almost a prerequisite for everything we do now. So there's a learning process, and that takes time. Loosely speaking, this adjustment period would need to increase at the same rate as technological change. There's no evidence this is happening. Technological process is leaving the human labor market behind. I believe that the reason new emerging sectors have consistently come about to save the human labor market as each sector gets replaced by machine is because the rate of change in technology was not that dramatic at that point in time. It hadn't sped up as fast as it is now. The human mind and body, which hasn't really evolved that much in thousands of years, now has to compete with its own creation. Mechanization is leaving us behind. In other words, we cannot adapt to the speed of applied mechanization. However, that's only one side of the coin. The costs of computer technology, which is the backbone of mechanization, is now becoming exponentially cheaper as well. The first mass-produced calculators were about $100 in 1949. That's $736 adjusted for inflation today. A new digital pocket calculator can now be obtained for $1 or less, if not free. Here is a chart done by Ray Kurzweil, who does brilliant research in technological trend analysis regarding the evolution of computer power and cost based on millions of instructions per second. In 1990, we had 1 million instructions per second for $1,000. 10 years later, it was 1,000 million for $1,000. 10 years later, it was a million. And by 2020, it will be 1 billion million for the cost of $1,000. If we apply this pattern to technology as a whole, and by the way, again, this is speculative, but we do see most everything reducing in cost based on the efficiency of production. And if we apply this pattern to the whole of applied invention, this means it is simply a matter of time before the corporations can no longer rationalize their moral obligation to maintain their employees for the sake of the system. The cost differential between giving a human being a living wage versus automation will be far too dramatic. It will be far too cheap to mechanize. Of course, economists will argue this, and they'll say, oh, there's a trickle-down effect, and since the cost of production is consistently becoming cheaper, the cost of goods will become cheaper, and therefore purchasing power requirements of the individual becomes less. Sure, this might be historically true. I guess you could call it efficiency-based devaluation. However, that competitive decision is entirely contingent upon the whims of the manufacturer. Therefore, there is a contradiction of motives. Remember, they get the machine so they can cut costs, so they can make more profit from their current price structure. Once this occurs, we're going to see more unemployment and more instability. And sadly, instability is often the prerequisite for social change. The problems constitute what we call biosocial pressures. The more destabilized things become, the more motivation there will be to seek an alternative. Of course, this is a delicate balance. I personally do not want to see any more suffering on this planet, but my feelings have no relevance to the patterns of social evolution. The Zeitgeist movement hopes to ease this issue by not only providing people with an alternative in an intellectual and statistically valid manner, but also a strategy to push forward, to essentially push the establishment to release their reins of arrogance, power, and inefficiency and join the rest of the world in a common goal of uninhibited sustainability. Hence, it is a mass awareness campaign, by promoting essentially a collective consciousness shift, if you will. We do this through a relentless global public awareness campaign, which will, in time, hopefully become so large in each country that the establishment will have no choice but to pay attention. It is based on the model of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. If the establishment orders and government do not recognize this direction, then the public has a very unique position. We don't have to participate in the games that have been set up. Nonviolent, peaceful non-participation is a possible path. Frankly, I hope it won't be needed. However, I think we should be realistic. If the people of the world can see this alternative, learn about it, understand it, and support it, then no government, army, or bureaucracy in existence can stand in the way of a critical mass of global proportions. But again, I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope that the powers that be can come to terms with the fluid transition and see the merit of what we're talking about. But as we have shown, the established orders do not have that propensity. It's going to take influence, that's for sure. Given that, one of the more specific tactics we want to utilize to engage the public is to build a model city, utilizing the methods and understandings we have set forth thus far. This city system could be used as a hub for research and exposure. The public, along with world leaders, would be invited to visit and experience the basis of this approach in a real-life setting.